The one thing that everyone knows going forward is the Blue Jackets goaltending is going to look very different next season. But how different? What could it look like? We're going to talk about all of that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. We're going to talk about goaltending today. We talked about it a little bit / a lot in the live show last night after the game, and I had a couple of thoughts that I'd kind of been mulling over for a while. And basically, I want to talk about what does the goaltending look like next year for the Blue Jackets, or what could it potentially look like, right? Because I think there are a lot of things that are probable, and I think there are a lot of things that are still up in the air, and I think a lot of it really depends on, well, kind of I think some of it depends on what happens tonight, tomorrow, potentially the next 2 to 8 weeks, depending. Not to get too ahead of myself, but if the Blue Jackets make the playoffs, I think that's probably going to be a different conversation than if the Blue Jackets go deep into the playoffs, than if the Blue Jackets miss the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. But the one constant that we have kind of, that everyone seems to agree on is Jet Greaves is going to be in the NHL next season. Now, I've seen a bunch of people saying that he's going to be in the NHL because he's on a one-way contract. That's not how one-way contracts work, just as a heads up. And I assume that most of my everydayers will know this, but in case you don't, if you're new here or whatever, the difference between a one-way and a two-way contract just means how much you get paid. So if you're on a one-way contract, you get paid the same amount whether you are in the NHL or the AHL. If you are on a two-way contract, that means that you get paid an amount of money when you are in the NHL and a different amount of money, usually about 10% of that actual cap hit, you get paid in the AHL. So if you're making $900K in the NHL, you'll probably be making around about $90K in the AHL. This is mostly so teams can save a little bit of cap space, save a little bit of money, by if they need to send a player down, for example, or a player that might be in the NHL and might be in the AHL, they'll get a two-way contract, right? Because then there's no pressure to keep them in the NHL because you're not having to bury their cap hit in the AHL, right? Jet Greaves next season is going to be on a one-way contract. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head. I had, again, every day it's a bingo square for you guys. I had the tab open and then lost it immediately. Jet Greaves he's going into the second year of a 2-year contract extension right now. It was two-way this year, making $812,500. Same amount of money next year, but it's going to be a one-way contract, which means that instead of getting paid probably around about $80K in the minors, if he does go back down, he will be making he was making $250,000 in the minors, as opposed to 812 in the NHL. Next season, he's going to be making 812,000 regardless of where he plays. I don't think he's quite yet waivers ineligible. I don't know off the top of my head when he does become waivers eligible. I would have to look at the numbers and do math, and we've learned that I can't do math on the fly, as evidenced by both the beginning and the end of yesterday's episode, right? But all of this is to say, Jet Greaves is 99% going to be in the NHL next year. For a handful of reasons, right? I think this play of late has really kind of elevated him. I think that's moved him. I think that's moved the timeline up. My guess is that next year was going to be hey, let's see if he can stick in the NHL year. That's been fast forwarded a little bit by his play this year. He's been excellent. It's like the past 4 games, he has been stellar, but he's been good all season long for the Blue Jackets. He only played a small number of games, but in that 10 games played, he's got like a 930 save percentage. He has allowed 20 goals in 10 games, but he was projected to allow, I think, 32 and a half. He's got a 934 save percentage, yeah. 12 and a half goals saved above expected, which, again, that kind of math scares some people. Basically, what that means is a goal saved above expected is the likelihood that would have been a goal on average, right? So they look at where the shot comes from, how often that shot becomes a goal, based on who's shooting it, where it's coming from. Like, is there a rebound? Is it a straight shot? Is it a deflection, etc., right? Usually you want your goalie to be saving more than he's expected to save, right? So the best goalie in the league this season, Connor Hellebuck, I believe has saved like 40 goals more than he should have. So he has allowed 124 goals against this season. He was expected to allow 161.8 goals against. So he saved almost 38 goals more than he should have done. Jet Greaves, obviously a much smaller sample size, but in the 10 games that he's played, he's allowed 20 goals when he should have allowed 32 and a half. So small sample size, but very, very promising numbers. And if you switch that to goals saved above expected per 60 minutes, which is a little bit more kind of, because Connor Hellebuck has saved a lot more goals above expected because he plays a lot, right? If you play goalies that have played at least 10 games, Jet Greaves is number 1. Now, again, 10 games is not a lot. Like, all of the guys that are coming up on him have played, Anthony Stolarz is second. He's played 34. Jake Allen, 31. Jakub Dobish played 16. Hellebuck, 62. Logan Thompson, 43. Like, all of the guys that are in the top 5 or 6 have played a lot more hockey than Jet Greaves. But I still think there's something there, right? So, Jet Greaves, obviously making the most of this situation. And we've seen people that pay attention to the monsters have seen this before, right? Jet Greaves is not the biggest guy in the world. He's not like the most assuming guy in the world. Like, he doesn't, this is going to sound really mean, but like, he's not flashy. He doesn't have like a huge, loud personality like some players do, right? It just kind of very softly spoken, just kind of shows up and works hard and gets it done. And this, I'm not like subtweeting out loud like any other goalie. Like, I'm genuinely not. But Jet Greaves, quiet, unassuming, not the biggest guy in the world, still only 24 years old, undrafted, really great story, etc. Comes in and I think just decided that he was gonna be good. And so far it's working out for him, right? So all of this is to say, Jet Greaves is going to be one of the goalies next year. I think he's forced the Blue Jackets' hand, especially with this late run that they're on right now. Like, again, there's a lot up in the air still. Don't know what happens tonight, again, with the Habs and the Hurricanes. Don't know what happens tomorrow with the Islanders and the Blue Jackets game. Like, if the Habs win tonight, if the Habs get a point tonight, everything's over, right? But the Blue Jackets have clawed and gritted their teeth and got back into being 2 points away from a playoff spot. After that 6-game losing streak, I think every single person was like, you know what? They had a good run, but it's not going to do it. Especially because it coincided with the Montreal Canadiens having a solid winning streak at the same time. Like, we thought it wasn't going to happen. Jet Greaves comes in, decides that he's going to will this team to the playoffs, and he might just do it, right? That's what I mean by forcing this team's hand. The fact is, this team, obviously Elvis is out injured at the minute. We don't know if there are no specifics as far as I'm aware. It's still just upper body. He did skate today. He is not going to be an option tomorrow. That's for a handful of reasons. But the main one for me is, I think it's that Jet Greaves has earned earned the right to finish out the season. Again, I don't know what'll happen if the Habs win tonight, if the Habs get a point tonight and eliminate the Blue Jackets. Does Greaves get to play tomorrow? I think yes, you let him finish out the regular season because of what he's done over the last 4 games. But he's come in. He has unseated Daniil Tarasov, basically. Like, Tarasov's probably played his last game as a Blue Jacket, and he played about 4 minutes of it. It was that game against Ottawa where they went down 2-0 early in the game, and that was the last time that Daniil Tarasov has played a game for the Blue Jackets. So Elvis goes down with an injury. They call Jet Greaves up. I'm like, right, okay, well, I guess is going to back Tarasov up. He played last night. Nope, Jet Greaves plays tonight, then plays both games over the weekend, then plays against Philadelphia, and you've got to think he's going to be in goal tomorrow against the Islanders. That, I think, says more about Tarasov than it does about Greaves, right? This organization, I think, is done with Tarasov, which is a shame because, again, he's one of those guys that I think he has a lot of potential, and he just couldn't really string a good stretch together. Injured a lot, playing behind a leaky defense a lot, is one of those guys that I've said it all the time. The more he plays, the better he is. So the fact that he just kind of has been sitting on the bench a lot this season has not been great for his game. My guess is he's going to go and become a very reasonable goalie somewhere else. I don't know where that somewhere else is, but Tarasov is not going to be a Blue Jacket in October. Just straight up isn't. I think he's an RFA still, but my guess is that they just won't qualify him and he'll become a UFA and he can go wherever, right? Elvis is a more of a question mark. Like, there's a world where the tandem next season is Greaves and Elvis. There's a world where it's Greaves and somebody else. And so I kind of want to talk about both of those options. I did a little Twitter poll earlier today. So I figured we would talk a little bit about like the options that I put out there, and then what you guys think, and then we'll go from there and maybe kind of try and figure out who the best option is to play with Greaves next season. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on like DoorDash, for example. And that it was a bit of a come to Jesus moment. And so shout out to Monarch for making me, do the math there. And also, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. You don't have to do what I used to do, which is open my banking app and then open my budgeting app and then open a spreadsheet and then go back to my budgeting app and then go back to my spreadsheet and then back to my banking app. Like, I can do it all in one place. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for 50% off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about goalies today, always. As you know, this is a goalie-friendly show, but we've talked a little bit about kind of how the Blue Jackets got to where they are right now. Jet Greaves has earned a spot on the roster next season. Like, I think, again, like there's a world where, however this season ends, there's a world where Greaves comes in to training camp next season and is not one of the two best goalies on the roster. It's unlikely, but it is an option, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say that Greaves is absolutely going to be one of the goalies next year, but I think it's very unlikely that he won't be, right? If only because Tarasov is gone, and I wouldn't be surprised if Elvis is also gone. So Greaves is the only one left standing, right? It depends on, again, don't know who they bring in to replace either of those guys. We'll talk about that in a second here, but like your starting point for the goaltending next season is Jet Greaves. So now you've got to decide who plays with him. And so I put a poll up on Twitter just for fun. And decided to see what you guys think. And so I kind of had three options because one of them was something we talked about a little bit in the live show last night, which is there a world in which Greaves is the starter and Elvis is the backup next season? So that was option one, is Elvis backs up Jet Greaves next season. Option two is, do you go out there and find a veteran, sign him for 1 year, maybe 2, and, play him 20 to 30 games? Probably closer to 30. Although Greaves loves to play, so maybe he will play 60 games next season. But do you go out there and find a veteran that can back Greaves up and be like just a good veteran backup? Like, I'm thinking about Curtis McElhinney never really put up the numbers that I think a lot of people wanted him to, but I thought he was a perfectly acceptable backup. Just did the right things, right? And I think, do you go out and get a guy like that to back Greaves up, or do you go out and you get another young goalie? Like, we're talking about, it's not going to be Spencer Knight or Yaroslav Askarov or anyone of that kind of caliber, but like those players specifically. But do you get a player that you hope can be your franchise goalie, and you run him and Greaves as a tandem and see what happens? And then whoever stands out gets to stay, or, it depends on a lot. Well, there's a lot of things it depends on, but I think the main thing is it depends on, does this team believe that Jet Greaves can be their franchise goalie? Is this a hot streak right now? Is he playing above his means? Is he going to come back down to earth, right? Because I don't know that what is it? He's on like a 980 save percentage in his past 4 games. That's obviously unsustainable. But if you can get like between a 910 and a 920 out of Jet Greaves next season, then you're in really, really good shape. Better than really good shape, honestly. So, do you go out and get a goalie that you think can be the starter? Again, we're talking someone like Spencer Knight, but probably not Spencer Knight. Or do you go out and get like an old guy that will be the backup, but is not like decrepit enough that he can't step in if he needs to, right? Like, there's a real fine line. And again, there's a couple of names on the UFA goalie list that I've kind of been eyeing for this as an option. Do you go out there, you sign them? I think literally you give them a 1-year contract and see what happens, right? It doesn't tie you to anything long term, and if you think Jet Greaves is going to turn into the player that you think he's going to turn into, then you can just kind of play it year by year, right? Greaves is still under contract for next year, so you don't have to worry about that. Next summer could be interesting, especially, I still don't know that they, immediately sign him long term after 1 season of being a full-time NHL goalie, but we'll see. So those are kind of the options that we're looking at here, is, do they get a veteran? Do they get a young guy? Or do they keep Elvis? The results of the poll were unsurprising, let's say. A veteran as backup was the clear winner at 66.7%. In second place was Elvis as a backup with 30%, 29.6%, which is more than I thought he would get, frankly. And then 3.7% of people said a young goalie for a tandem. So I thought that there would be more people in favor of bringing in another young goalie. But again, it really depends on, what do you think this organization thinks of Jet Greaves, right? And right now, I think this organization thinks the world of him, because he's a gamer, right? You can see it in the way that the other players talk about him, in the way that the coach talks about him, in the way that the GM talks about him. Like, I don't see a world where Jet Greaves is not given every opportunity to be the starting goalie next season. Obviously, again, it depends on who they bring in free agency, and if they find out that someone is available that, they think maybe has a better shot. Like, I'm thinking potentially someone like Jesper Falstedt in Iowa, who has not been given basically any chance to succeed in any part of the organization, because the Iowa Wild are a nightmare, and the big team have been rolling Fleury and Gustafsson all season. Like, if you can price someone like Falstedt out of Minnesota, like, where does that leave Greaves, right? So, depending on what they do over the summer, seems to me that Greaves is going to he's basically going to go in penciled in as the number 1 goalie, and then it's his job to lose, right? So Tarasov, gone. Elvis, potentially still around. And someone on Twitter had an interesting point about it, which was Jeff Thomas. Basically said, I feel like Elvis sticks around one more year and then he'll be traded / dropped. The contract is too big to do anything this offseason. I think him as a backup makes sense. Jet seems to be making a statement for next year. I don't necessarily think that the contract is too big to do anything with. I still think that a buyout is an option. It's very affordable. For the Blue Jackets, I think it's $1.5 million for the next 4 years, as opposed to paying $5.5 million for the next 2 years. So you're paying for longer, but you end up paying less, especially because Elvis is maybe he's not under the age of 30 anymore, actually. But basically, the contract, if they buy it out, is not going to break the bank, right? Do I think the contract is tradable? Not necessarily, but I also thought Jonas Korpisalo's contract was untradeable, and Boston sure did trade for him. So again, we'll see what's happening. What's happening there? But I won't be surprised if Elvis is on the team next year. I don't know that it will create the best environment if they relegate him to backup. He has been better this year, I think. He's been more of a team player. I know that there was some drama last season, which again I talked about last night, in terms of like he was the third goalie for a minute because the goalies were all underperforming. So they brought Jet Greaves in and rotated Greaves and Tarasov for a while there. And Elvis didn't like that at all. So I can only imagine, like, he's not going to love being the backup. But I also don't know that he'll have much of a choice in it, right? Because his options are be the backup, ask for a trade, play his way into being the starting goalie again. Like, play better than Greaves. Like, that's what his job next season, if he sticks around, should be. I want to be better than Jet Greaves. And I don't know whether he will do that, but that's where he should be at, right? So I don't hate the idea of Elvis as a backup. I think he'll be a perfectly acceptable backup. Again, Elvis gets tired easily. Elvis is not the most durable goalie. Like, playing him less might actually get better results for the Blue Jackets. So having him as a backup is not like the worst option in the world. I lean towards getting a veteran goalie. Again, it really all depends on what happens for the rest of this season, whether the season finishes tonight, tomorrow, in 2 weeks, in 8 weeks, whatever. Like, but for me, Jet Greaves is you have to give him the opportunity to make his mark, right? And so I don't think bringing in another young goalie to compete with him is necessarily the best move. I'm really high on Jesper Falstad. I think he is a fantastic young goalie that has kind of been shafted by the Wild. But if you bring him in, then I don't know what happens with Greaves. And I think, like, Greaves has given you at least the next season. I think Greaves has made enough of a case that you look at him like, okay, well, you're the guy next season. It's a contract year. Earn your next contract, right? That being said, who is available to back Greaves up next season? Because the goalie market is real thin. However, if you're looking for a guy that you want someone that can play for another 1 to 2 years, play, 30-ish games a season, isn't going to break the bank, is not going to be a complete liability if you put him in. There are some options out there, but it's going to be finding the right fit for this team. So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about FanDuel, because the NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting super easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From 3-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com, claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All you got to do is place a $5 bet. If your bet wins, you get $250 to spend on whatever you want. FanDuel.com, the official partner of the NBA and also us, the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's go ahead and take a look at some goalies that could be Jet Greaves' backup next season, because that I do genuinely think like that's the way it's going. I think again, I could see Elvis staying. I could see them bringing in a young guy, a la, like an Askarov, or like a Spencer Knight, someone like that. But I think that Greaves is owed a season, right? Or at least some of a season. If next season comes and everything falls apart, you address it then. So you've got to think that the plan is find a backup for Jet Greaves, and it's probably going to be an older guy, probably going to be not a career backup, but definitely someone that is at the end of his career, let's say. So, a couple of guys that I had kind of looked at. One guy that I'd looked at, again, I just kind of Puckpedia has pending UFAs on there, like on a table, and you can sort by like save percentage and contract contract amount, cap hit, etc., etc. There's only actually 15 goalies that are going to be UFAs coming into this summer, and 2 of them are Robin Lehner and Chris Driedger, who've both played 0 games in the NHL this year. Chris Driedger has been down in the AHL. Robin Lehner is basically done. Like he's unofficially retired and is collecting his paycheck, right? So you're 13 goalies that are pending UFAs right now. You've got Jake Allen, Frederick Anderson, Anton Forsberg, James Reimer, Marc-Andre Fleury, who is retiring, so he also doesn't count, Jonas Johansson, Dan Vladar, Alex Lyon, Ilya Samsonov, David Rittich, Vitek Vanacek, Ville Husso, Alexander Georgiev. Those are your options. So 12 if you take Flower out of it. There are some guys on this list that I'm like, I don't touch them with a barge pole. Alexander Georgiev, for example, not worth it. Is statistically the worst goalie on this list. Was brutal when he was with Colorado and has been worse since getting to San Jose. Ville Husso is a guy that I liked a lot and has kind of fallen off a little bit. Vitek Vanacek has also kind of been up and down. David Rittich is a name that I like. He's 32 years old. He's currently in year one of a $1 million contract with the LA Kings. Is backing up Darcy Kemper. Now he's only got an 889 save percentage right now, but he's got 16 wins on the season. Now, partially that's probably because of the Kings are a good team, but in his 33 games, he's got 16 wins, which is not nothing, right? And his goals against average is below 3, which is also always a good thing. I don't really rate like goals against average or wins as like goalie stats necessarily, but I'm also not looking for a guy with like the most sparkling stats, because David Rittich is kind of the exact kind of guy that I was talking about, right? You want him to play between 30 and 35 games, and you want him to not be a disaster. And that's kind of what they need. So he is definitely a guy that I would look out for. He's been good when he has been needed to be for LA. He's had some rough games, but he's also had some really good games. So if LA is looking to move on from him, David Rittich is definitely a guy that I would look at. Another potential is Dan Vladar, who is 27 years old. He's with Calgary Flames right now. He's finishing up a 2-year contract for $2.2 million. Had an 895 save percentage, and two shutouts in 29 games. Won 11 of them. Again, not like the most sparkling stats in the world, but he's done okay considering Calgary has been Calgary, right? He's not a billion years old. He's probably not going to break the bank. He'll probably be a little bit more expensive than Rittich, but he's also like he's younger and his numbers are slightly better. So again, he played 29 games this year, which is right about the amount of games that you'd want a guy like that to play. And is not an abject disaster every time he steps onto the ice, that's tough to ask for in a backup goalie, right? So he's probably, I think I like Rittich more than I like Vladar, but both of them are pretty good options. The third option on this list is Freddie Anderson, who's currently playing for the Carolina Hurricanes. He's in the second year of a $3.4 million contract. Problem is he's 35 years old right now. He's only played 21 games this year, but 13 of those have been wins, and he's got a 907 save percentage. Now, Freddie Anderson's problem is that he has missed a bunch of time over the past handful of seasons. Like when he's healthy, he was one of the better goalies in the league, if you ask me. However, he has not been able to stay healthy for a while now. Again, 21 games this season. He only played 16 last season, 34 the season before that. Like he played 52 in 21-22, but I feel like since then he's had a lot of surgeries. He's had a lot of injuries. I believe he had a blood clotting disorder for a minute there as well, so he missed a bunch of time with that as well. The age, like, is not on his side. Statistically speaking, he's the best goalie on this list, and I probably would throw like a 1-year contract at him if it was, probably 2 million, 2.5 million. I'd probably throw a 1-year contract at him. Likely it'll be his last year in the league. And by all accounts, nice guy. Again, a good backup, a good veteran backup. The other name on this list that I kind of hadn't really considered is Jake Allen. Mostly because I think that he'll probably be sticking around in New Jersey if they can keep him. 34 years old, has a 908 save percentage, and has played 31 games this year for the New Jersey Devils, playing behind Jacob Markstrom, who's also been very good this year, coming off a 2-year, $3.85 million cap hit. So those two guys are kind of on the wrong side of the aging curve. But again, if you can throw Jake Allen will cost more than Freddie Anderson. He will cost more than Vladar and Riddick as well. So like he'll be probably the most expensive option on this list, but he's also got the best stats. And 34 is not like massively old, but it is just old enough that I would be wary, again, giving him more than a 1 or 2 year contract. So those are kind of the 4 names that I'd kind of picked out. Like Anton Forsberg is not really, like, doesn't really move the needle for me. James Reimer is 37 years old. Jonas Johansson has been fine for the Lightning, but I feel like if you're playing behind the Lightning, you need to be better than fine, right? Alex Lyon is a goalie. Ilya Samsonov is another potentially interesting name, but I think that he had his spirit broken by the Leafs and has never really found his way back from that. So that's the list there of potential veterans. Like, pickings are kind of slim. Again, like there's potential for trades. Do I know what those trades would be? Not necessarily. But of the free agent goalies, like those are the 4 that I've kind of picked out. And I think of those 4, contract depending, I think my preferences are I think you go Anderson, Riddick, Jake Allen, and then who my last guy was that I've already forgotten. Dan Vladar. That's kind of my order of preference for those guys based on how much money they're probably going to get, how good I think they're going to be, and how much we're going to need them to play. Because again, Jet Greaves, knock on wood, he's only 24, he's young, he's healthy. We're going to knock on wood again, just in case. If he's going to be the starting goalie, you want him playing between 50 and 55 games a year. Maybe up to 60 or more games a year. I believe the leading goal scorer this year was so Andrei Vasilevsky and Connor Hellebuck have both played 62 games this year. That to me feels a scooch high, but a lot of the starting goalies play somewhere between 50 and 60 games. So if you can hit like that sweet spot there with Greaves, and he plays, let's say, 55 games, then you only need a guy to play 25, 27 games to make it to 82. I think I think my math is right on that. Might not be. We'll see. If you can get 55 games out of Greaves, you only need someone to play 27 games. And they don't need to be the best 27 games in the world, but they need to be better than what the Blue Jackets have had this year, right? Maybe Elvis only playing 27 games a year will be better, but you can't look at a guy like Neil Tarasov and think that there's no way to make that position better. So there are options out there. There are not as many options as I would like, but there are definitely options out there. So we'll see. we'll see how tonight goes. The Blue Jackets need a regulation loss from the Montreal Canadiens to keep their playoff hopes alive, so we are crossing our fingers. And from then, we'll figure it out. All of this is a problem for like future Don Waddell, right? Like this is not something that needs to be worked out right now immediately. But I do think that Jet Greaves has made his job a little bit easier this summer, because I do think there was going to be a lot of conversation about like they need to improve the goaltending. How do they do that? How do they find two new goalies that are, going to be able to carry the load for this team? And the answer is you already had one of them, so it's great. We will see how it goes. That's kind of what I've got for today. I didn't mean to talk this long about goalies, and hey, shockingly, it happened anyway. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jacket. And we'll be back tomorrow with another episode. We'll be talking about tomorrow night's game against the New York Islanders, where I'll be talking to Gil Martin, host of Locked On Islanders, about it, actually. We're recording after the Hurricanes Habs game, so we will know whether the Blue Jackets are still alive or not by the time we record. And that'll be tomorrow's episode, so make sure you stick around for that. Thanks for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Thank you once again for listening. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.